Welcome to Faith and Reason 25, the Biblical Theology Today joint podcast. We have a really interesting discussion tonight. I have my good friend Neil Dorn. In many ways, what we're going to do tonight is much like a lunch discussion that we have about issues of science in the Bible. I really appreciated Neil because he's helped me with this science bit and how to think well about science and the Bible. And so, Neil, it's good to see you tonight. I'm very excited about what we're going to do. Tell us a little bit about what you've been doing lately.
All right, and just like you said, having a lunch conversation is the way this all started, and I think that those conversations have really uncovered a lot of things that listeners would find of great interest. And so, one of the things I did this week was I looked at radiometric dating and some
Now,
more detail than I imagined I would, and
now can I pull up that slide and you can walk us through? And I suppose
sure.
before we do, this is your excellent website, and I just wanted to point out that we want to try to empower people. And if you find, I believe it's this button. If you click that, I think you can sign up for our newsletter. And if you sign up for our newsletter, what we're doing for all our listeners is we have a pastor's friend empowerment sheet, we're calling it. And it's basically kind of the notes for this podcast. So a lot going on. You will want to go to the website and find that contact information. But this is a little like what some of our conversations look like. And Neil, tell me what I'm looking at here.
Sure. And just one more thing, back on the website, the home and the about links on there, the pages, those should have an updated contact list for the newsletter. And but again, you're invited to just kind of click around and look at things. The blog link has shorter pieces, summaries of what Judd and I want to do for what we call pillar posts, which would be the biblical theology one I see lit up there in the middle, but it'll be others too: history and philosophy, geology, biology, and different issues like that. But you can click the home or the about links to find the mailing list, and we will put you on the mailing list, and then the contact is for some emails. So we'll look out for those as well. Now, this page right here that you opened up, Judd, I thought we'd just kind of start off and just from the beginning describe what radiometric dating is. And radiometric dating is a method that is based on the decay of one type of isotope to another.
And that's what this slide is about. I'm
Right,
guessing.
right.
And am I
And
right in thinking this is alpha decay and this is beta decay?
yes, exactly. The Greek scholar. That's right. So we
Okay.
know
Well,
the alpha
well,
and beta.
I just exhausted the total my total knowledge of all these slides. So
That's right. So we have two different types. We'll mention in a minute, but if you look at the chart, we have a variety of what we call parent isotopes.
okay, so
Uh,
this one.
Parent on the left, yeah, parent isotopes. And those are where we start. So for instance, at the top there, you have uranium-238, an isotope, radioactive isotope, that will decay to the next one on the right,
Oh, I
the
see.
stable
So it's
dot,
going from
stable
this to
dot.
this.
Yeah, yeah,
Oh, okay.
yeah. And so that's a stable end product, lead-208. And they've estimated the decay time for that for half of the uranium-238 series to go to lead-208
Oh,
is
that's what this
4.5
number
billion
is.
years. Yeah, on that side.
Okay, I see how this works.
Yeah, and that's the conventionally estimated age of the Earth, 4.5 billion years. And
Why
in
is this
sequence,
number different?
okay, below that, okay, notice that one's substantially less, 704 million. And that's because it comes from a different radioactive decay series. And so if you look back to the left, uranium 235 is the one at issue now, and that goes to lead 207.
So if
So
you
that's
had
an
if you had a
isotope.
sample with both those, how do you decide how old the Earth is? 4.5 or 704
All
million.
right, great question. All right, and that's kind of heading to where we're going, and that is that if I put both of those decay series in a mineral or in a rock, then let's say the Earth is 4.5 billion years old. In that case, the uranium series, uranium 238 series, should have half of its isotope ratio being 238 uranium, half being lead 208. But at the same time, as you said, we might have that uranium 235 and lead 207 series in there as well. Notice the 704 million year half life there, that in 4.5 billion years, we're going to have a different type of decay series going on there. And in only 704 million years, half that series has decayed. So that means 4.5 billion years, we're going to have a lot less of that ratio. And in
Now,
fact, those should cross-check each other.
and so what you're doing right now, your firsthand research is you're using AI to help you with some things, aren't you? In terms of, I'm assuming this is some kind of data point that you've run, and that looks like South America and North America to me. What's going on there?
All right. Well, back to the other screen with the alpha and the beta. There's two different types of decay series we can look at, and one is that the nucleus is going to lose the equivalent of a helium nucleus, and that's the alpha on the left, and that's going to contain two neutrons and two protons. That's going
Oh,
to be
okay,
a
I see that now. Yeah.
right. So some of those systems in that list that you saw are going to look like that. On the other hand, at the same
So
time, some of those
that's this.
exactly, it's a helium
Okay.
nuclei basically.
Okay.
We call that alpha decay. On the other side, if you can notice there, there's only one tiny thing coming off
Oh,
that one.
right. I see. I understand that.
Yeah,
Now,
that's the beta series.
now, what is then is all this?
Okay, this is a different way that this can happen as well. So there are different ways that we can do this. But just for simplicity, I was thinking about the one up top. And just say we can lose an electron for beta decay. And for alpha decay, we can lose the equivalent of a helium nuclei, which is two protons and two neutrons.
Okay.
And the point there is that different radiometric families will break down in different ways. And so, one of the things that creationism has focused on,
And that's where this is coming in. You're trying to come up with the thing that is going to explain why this is so different.
yeah, we're just kind of looking at we're just trying to look at the patterns, just see what's happening, and we have quite a large data set as you might have suggested, and they're scattered around the world. This is a little bit um, this chart right here. Maybe we can kind of just slow down here a little bit. When we mention the alpha and the beta decay series,
Oh, I see
in
how
this
it
chart,
works now.
yeah, in this
This is
chart we
your
have alpha
alpha.
and beta. Yeah, alpha's in the red and beta is in the blue. You'll notice that there's a little bit of an offset there on each step, and so
The
if we look
alphas
at
and betas aren't quite agreeing.
well, that's right, and so in creationism sometimes they've looked at that and noticed that discrepancy. So I did a lot of data analysis on that to try to understand, is this a legitimate discrepancy or is this something that may be an artifact of something else. And those on maybe the theistic evolution side would say there's absolutely no problem in any of these systems. Those on the creationist side are going to say the entire thing is flawed. But what I found is really that the systems are largely accurate, and there are a few questions. As we go
Now,
through, I can point
is
these
this
out.
the next slide then? That
Yeah. So one of those things that we can do, and there's different ways we can analyze these points. This chart kind of shows a comparison of alpha and beta, and this in rock units that are very close to one another, so we can bring them together and take a look at them. And if you'll notice, the red line is complete conformity between alpha and beta. And so those that are on that line show that the alpha and the beta decayed at the same rate and the same time, which is really what you'd expect. What we notice in this diagram, though, we notice there are a lot of points that are off that line. And for the most part, the
like
alpha decay series,
the outliers like here and here.
yeah, so the alpha decay series most often dates older than the beta decay series. That was that other bar chart that we saw as well.
Oh yeah,
That was what that was showing
the
us there. So the
the
red is
alpha is
above the
usually
blue.
older.
That's correct.
Okay, all right.
So we analyzed quite a number of these, not only in North America, but actually from samples around the world.
And is that what
Next,
this
yes,
chart is? So
yes,
you've been running radiometric analysis from all these places, and you're using AI to harvest the data. Is that right?
yeah. So we can grab the data by different techniques like that, and look at some pretty large data sets. So these are 165,000 for North America overall. That we had about from global samples about 200,000. So this is a very large set that I was able to look at simultaneously and examine some of these questions.
Mm. So I imagine our listeners are saying, Neil, that's very interesting. What in the world does that have to do with John 2? Like how do you go from radiometric dating to Christian thinking about John John 2? Did I say Psalms 2? 2 John 2.
Here in John 2, we have a really interesting question that has been addressed by some in church history, like Goss, with what we call the
So
follows argument.
so I'd actually never heard this word omphalos, and I'm sad to say I'd never heard it because it's actually a Greek word, isn't it? Means belly button or something like that. I should have put the lexicon entry, but tell me what Goss is arguing. Like he wrote this book in 1857, and someone told me that he and Charles Lyell were actually friends, and Lyell didn't like this book. I don't know if that's true. I only have done very cursory research, but what is Goss arguing in this book he wrote, Omphalos?
Well, Goss has a lot of had a lot of support and a lot of detractors. Uh, on the side of support, that he makes a valid argument that when God creates an entity, how old is that entity going to look? If God starts with nothing and he creates wine, wine from water. If he creates fish and loaves, what is that going to look like? What is the age of the entities created going to look like? And on the one hand, he has a valid question that we need to address, and that is, what about the question of inherent age in created entities.
Did
The
did
other side of that,
Adam have a belly button? Is basically.
correct, correct. The other side of that is for Amphalos, he went a bit far and would say that all the fossils and all the rock layers that we know of, those are created and placed by God. So we have biological communities of complex organisms that were created in situ in rock layers and had a history that was not one that we can study as a real history. And and so the way that argument has been used is to move us away from the idea of the reality of what God has created when He's created something with an appearance of age. So
Now,
that's another thing that we need to address.
now, why? If we could just talk about the biblical theology of John 2, when I, as a student of the Bible, come to John 2, I look at things like Jesus turned the water into wine, Moses turned water into blood. Jesus is coming as the new or better than Moses. The Mosaic system cleansed you on the outside. He changes that system, the Jewish um, waters, to go from outer cleansing to inner cleansing. The old way would be a very hard system to live under, and Jesus transforms that to a very joyous system. So you've got that, but you at lunch, when we were talking about this, raised a very interesting issue about which I was completely ignorant. And that is, if I brought you a bottle of wine today, and I said, this bottle of wine is from 1200 AD, and it was part of a famous king's collection, is there a way you could test whether that statement from me was true scientifically?
My understanding from the way that the wine industry works is yes, they have ways that they can tell how old something is, how genuine it is. And even when you think of the idea of expert wine tasters, of which there are many, that they can pick up all kinds of accents and hints in the product that suggests not only the age, but even the location of where various wines were grown.
So,
So the point there is that this wine is a chemical product that has myriad indicators of of, of its age, of its biochemical components, and so on, and that these are inherent in what it is for something to be wine. By definition, wine is an aged product of grapes, and it has all that suite of chemical colors in it, if you will, that create what wine is.
so we were talking earlier today, and I suggested that in heaven, I was talking about. I imagine your place in this massive mansion would include a pretty nice laboratory, and it warmed my
Uh,
heart that you laughed, and I could see the glimmer in your eye that you would love to have just the state of the art equipment, and you could tell, if God gave you a sample of that wine, you could test it for certain things. And we talked about you could test to see if that wine had been in animal skins, and you could maybe, if the equipment were sensitive enough, would you be able to tell what kind of wine skin it would be? And Goss's question is so fascinating because when the text says it was good wine, well, how do I understand that? Was it aged somehow artificially? Did it have a parent age? Did the process of aging that would take years? Did Jesus somehow accelerate that um, to take it from water? And so it raises so many of those questions. But the fascinating part is those are the exact questions that we face when we look at other things that have apparent age. Is it not?
No, I think you're absolutely right. And one other element here to mention is where this kind of falls short in the eyes of a lot of people. And I'm sympathetic partly to them, but the question of apparent age makes it sound deceptive.
Right. That
And
was one of the criticisms of Goss, was it not? At least some people thought that Goss was saying, "Oh, God created deceptive time." But what I'm hearing you say is it's part of being good wine. And it was interesting because when and you and I both are big AI fans, and when I was having Claude AI, which I love Claude, the help Claude gives, I I did not know anything about Goss's book, so I asked Claude for a summary, and Claude said that his book was not well received because it was criticized from both sides. Lyell, and I did not check this, I'm depending solely on Claude here, who was a friend of Goss, said that his theory was untestable. And I can't remember what the critique from the other side, but I remember you and I had the conversation where one of the things that you could test in wine is something about isotopes. And so I, um, said to Claude, Neil Dorn and I are going to do a podcast on this. And I think we're not saying this is deceptive time, but rather that in creating good wine, it had to be aged or seem aged, because if it weren't, it wouldn't be good wine. And it was very odd when I put that question in. Um, Claude responded that that was much closer to Goss's actual point. He wasn't arguing for deceptive time. He was saying I think the example he gave, and I know you have a philosophical edition here, but everything is a process. When you come to an oak tree, you've got the tree, you've got the acorn it came from. You and I talked today. There are actually sexes in trees. Trees can be male or female, and so if when it says God created a fruit tree, to bear fruit after its kind, if you were there with God and you saw that tree grow up out of the ground and produce fruit, well, normally that's going to be a process that takes 35 years. But if you see it with your own eyes and it happens seemingly immediately in the presence of God, it's like, is it 35 years old or is it 3 seconds old? And you have an interesting take on that. Do you not?
well, one thing is, and this maybe this I bounce this back to you as a theologian. That is, when God creates anything, is what He creates, or can what He creates be deceptive? So if
Yeah,
we say that,
God is light. In Him there is no darkness at all. God hates a lying tongue. It's one of the seven abominations that God talks about. But we would not be arguing that it's deceptive, but it's actually part of what it means to be an oak tree, right? To be apparently from an acorn, and in that cycle, somewhere in the cycle of growing big to produce an acorn. And so the whole omphalos argument is a great one. Like, would Adam's DNA have looked like our DNA, where it looked like he would have had two parents, but you've seen with your own eyes that God created him. He didn't have two parents. So how trying to work through that scientifically, like exactly what that would mean, that's a very difficult question, isn't it?
Well, in one sense, it's a little bit simple in the sense that if we came from Adam and we're related, Adam had two strands of DNA that he passed on to his children. So did Eve. And so in that sense, it's simple. But where I think it gets complex is that for us as Americans, I don't think that we're very attuned to thinking philosophically about things, stopping and really probing questions.
Help me
We end
think
up
through that.
simply, excuse me?
Help me think through that.
Well, just like what you're saying, what you're talking about was a very philosophical question. You're talking about you have an acorn, it grows in the ground. There are apical and root meristems that penetrate the soil. It grows up as a shoot. It has phloem and xylem that will grow successively over time. It'll put out shoots. It'll have leaves. It has bark. And these are all products of time. But like you said, if God did this instantaneously, then we have something that we're not accustomed to seeing. And I think it's
Or if he did it where you're standing there in the imminent presence of God, and it, one of those time lapse things where you're watching it with your own eyes, and it's taking just a few seconds, but the maturation that's happening would normally be over years and years and years. How do you answer that question? Is it really old, or is it really young, or are
yeah,
we?
I think this is where the dilemma comes in and where we get uncomfortable. And the answer is it seems it's both old and young at the same time. And this is where it gets difficult to comprehend
de-
and
de-
even
Depending on what
disorient.
you choose to measure, if you're measuring your existence in the presence of God, then well, it's a few seconds old if it sprang up out of the ground and produced fruit, and yet that would be a completely measurable process. If we did that today, put an acorn in the ground, how long would it take before it, was 100 feet tall and produced its own acorns?
That's absolutely correct. And I think this is where we get a little bit uncomfortable when we try and say God did this, but it's old, but it's young. To give you a little bit of a connection there, and again, you as a theologian, I think are best to answer this. That my take when I look at Jesus' ministry with his disciples, the kind of thing that Jesus was doing all the time with them, not occasionally, but all the time. At the end of the book of John, John says, you couldn't contain all of Jesus' works in all the books of the world. There were so many things that he did, but I would imagine it was disorienting to be in Jesus' presence many times. That they saw so many things, it looks like they couldn't take them in. Whether it was walking on the water, it was doing one of these miracles. It said their hearts were hardened after the miracle of the loaves and the fishes, that it would have been difficult to take all those in. And so you mentioned being in the presence of God. What would that have been like? And I think sometimes we don't really think through very deeply what it means for something to be a miracle.
Yeah, yeah. Someone commented that if you're the head waiter and you drank the wine and you said it's good wine, there are many assumptions that you would make as the head waiter. You would know things about good wine and the age of good wine, and those things would be completely true. Good wine, this is how good wine behaves. But maybe the wrong question is, how was Jesus able to do it in what appears to be a very short time? And and is that deceptive, or is that part of what it means for good wine to be good wine? To have what looks like to the disinterested observer, um, the appearance of great, great, great age.
It seems to be what is the definition of a good wine, and that is something that it was an aged product. It was derived from grapes. Those grapes, in our experience, grew in the ground. They were once in the soil. They were once rained upon, etc. So, what Jesus did was he basically somehow, and this is part of our other conversation I find so fascinating. Jesus somehow collapsed our distinctions and our experience of time, possibly in one sense, into a very compressed period of time. But it
The
seems like one of the attributes of God's appearance here and presence with us is that He at will could step in and out of time in various ways like that, in addition to everything else, in addition to all the other physical parameters He could change, whether it was walking on the water or stilling a storm or what have you. The times
walking through with a resurrected body, walking through a wall.
exactly.
What's interesting is if you bring into this discussion the whole idea of the atemporality of God. Aquinas has talked about that. Augustine, many of the Puritans have talked about that idea. That, and I really appreciate the latest version of Wayne Grudem's systematic theology, and I think Wayne Grudem may have slightly changed his view on this, but the whole idea that God does have this odd temporal existence, but it's vivid, it's interactive, it's I think in Latin they call it a nunc stans, a standing now, or something like that, where the way you and I are experiencing time is, the seconds pass. We will never again be at the beginning of this video. We're not yet at the end. For God, He is interacting vividly with every single moment in time, and the idea that temporal, vivid, um, uh, interactive, one standing now, that can break into temporal reality. You start wondering, is the Yom Echad of Genesis 1, day one, oddly a cardinal number, not an ordinal like all the rest? Is that God's temporal existence breaking into our existence? And then Zechariah 14 seems to be describing that Yom Echad of like all of time. And could it be that when Jesus is creating what looks like the appearance of great age, could it be his being fully God is actually having an impact on the way material reality functions in the world?
I think that makes perfect sense of all these questions that we're asking. That his presence, his power, can just freely step into these questions and just do things again that make us a little uncomfortable to think through and talk about, but are yet what entails the idea of miracles. Miracles mean that we're going beyond normal physical experience. And this is what Jesus did. Jesus, as God the Son here on earth, was doing on a smaller scale, it looks to me, what he did on a larger scale in the creation of the universe in Genesis 1:1, which
So,
we're
so the 13.7 billion light years, any direction you turn, up, down, front, back, sideways, those are real numbers. But if God did it, if somehow the atemporality of God is making processes happen faster than they apparently happen for us, that speaks more of who God is, not my ability to measure isotopic decay. I mean, if I'm in the presence of the imminent presence of God, and He creates a tree and it comes up out of the ground, well, what do I think if that runs backwards? You know, do I think, oh, this is like a football tape? You know, uh, and or does you had a beautiful phrase, and I don't know if I've included it yet in the empowerment sheet, but you said about something about time. Neil, what was it you said?
I think some of these questions are showing us that as everything is going to kneel before Christ, that time is kneeling before Christ here.
He can
That
play with it like a fidget spinner if he well, he can make it run fast, he can make it run slow, he can speak it into existence, out of existence. He uh, knows what my life was like the second I was born, and for God, and I think Luther says this that the I think the way Luther said it is the last second of the last human being on earth before the end of everything, that second, that last second is as immediate to God as the very first second when he spoke all creation into existence. And if you think of it that way, he did it in a way a lot of people push back on the temporality of God because they think of it as like God is this concrete, unchangeable, unemotional
you
pillar.
see God.
But if the same way you and I are experiencing this second, this immediate second, that God experiences all seconds that way, that for God, when I sin, that that's an eternal experience for God, which is why it takes an infinite Savior. It's always a standing now for God, and our existence in heaven for God, like keep seeking the things above where your life is hidden with Christ in God, that somehow right now God can experience our resurrected bodies uh, joined mystically with Christ in heaven. And so it seems to me that if God is the Lord of time, I wonder if God didn't know that we would be able to ask these questions. We would be able to measure things. You know, what did Christ make? 180 gallons of wine. That's far more than they needed. If if God gave you a sample of that and you ran it through your lab in heaven, um, there would be isotopes there. There might even be. We talked earlier today. There might be a plot of ground that you could say, well, you know, it looks like these grapes would have come, you know, from here. It's not deception, but it's part of God creating, part of His ability to create good wine. That to be good has to have an appearance of age to it.
Right, and I think it's important to know what is that definition of deception. We need to, I think, probably think through that and understand what that is. But going back to what you're saying about time, sometimes the way I think of it is when we think about time in physics, we have a combination of space, matter, and time. They all go together. You can't have time without the others. And just like if God creates a physical entity that we can hold, that God is holding all space and matter in his hand, just like he's handling time. So time is also an object. It's almost like an object he can pick up and just handle, just like you and I pick up an object in our hands and handle it. It's all outside of him. He's completely in control of it. It's not in control of him. He can he can pause on 1 second of that time as long as he wants.
The
He can stand
day
through the
with the
entire.
Lord is as 1,000 years, and 1,000 years is
Yeah,
as a day. That for God, it's wrong to think of sequential time. And Wayne Grudem does have a really good discussion of this. The original version of his systematic theology, he resisted the idea, at least as I understand it, of the way God's odd temporality is presented. But the more he interacted with better writers, he realized that um, what the doctrine of God's odd temporality is talking about is a vivid interaction with every second and all contingencies. And so when I'm faced tomorrow with a choice and I can either make myself happy or I can do something to make God happy, that I should choose to make God happy, because that's going to be an infinite uh, experience. And could it be that our uh, being made more like God is uh, our beginning in heaven, to experience more of uh, not strictly linear, but to experience more of reality the way God experienced reality. And we just don't know. I mean, it isn't, it, for me, it isn't that God is being deceptive, but God knows the measurements. The lab in his head is better than any lab will ever have. And the wine that Jesus created, perhaps, was it from the valley of Eshcol, where they took the grapes in Joshua? Was it from France or Southern California? We don't know. Is it the Aristotle's perfect, form? We don't know, but I don't think it's wrong to ask.
AG's Uber wine.
Yeah, yeah. I don't think it's wrong to ask the question, but the answer for me, the answer isn't to see whether the story is true. The answer is to see, okay, God tells me it's true. How can I understand that? How can I understand what I know of good wine with what God is able to do? Well, I see we have run out of time. I imagine this is going to be part of a much larger conversation. As always, thank you for being willing to do this. I pray that God will bless our discussions, and I'll look forward to talking to you again
Absolutely.
next time. Thanks.
Yeah.